Welcome to the Laws of Publishing. Today we're talking about who's the publisher. I'm Macarena Bianchi, book coach, publisher, and founder of Spark Social Press. This session is something I get asked constantly because choosing the publishing path is one of the most consequential decisions you'll make as an author. So today I want to make sure you walk away with everything you'll need to make that choice with confidence. So last time, if you're following along in your own pace, we talked about building the newsletter, growing your list, making sure your lead magnet is in place, building that audience while you're waiting for your book to be produced, or even better yet, during the writing process. So hopefully that is in place and you've been building your reader base. So today, this is about taking the next step, which is figuring out who's actually going to publish that book. So, some of you may be in the pre-draft phase. Some of you may be post-manuscript. This session is relevant at every stage. So, whether you're still writing or, your manuscript is finished, today, this will put the whole publishing picture into focus. So it's really, really important. And I am so glad you're here. So the problem, I want to start here because these are the most common things I hear from authors who come to me confused or stuck. So if any of these sound like you, I want you to know that, you're not alone. Now, the publishing industry is deliberately vague about these things because that's, that's the way it is. So if you don't, if you don't know someone who knows, it's very, very confusing. There's a lot of information, and sadly, there's a lot of scams out there. I cannot tell you how many current emails I get every single day about someone telling me they want to help me market my books or my books that are absolute garbage. So anyway, so welcome whoever's there. So some people don't know the difference between the different publishing options. So we're going to talk about that. They're concerned about the credibility of self-publishing. They don't want to give up control. So we'll talk about that. And they're not sure about, where to start with proposal pitching, printing options and the such. So here's what we're going to do today. We're going to walk through every option clearly and honestly, so you can make the decision that's right for you. So I want you to understand the pros and cons of each path, know exactly, what you give up and what you keep with each option, and learn when a proposal makes sense and how to write one. And I want you to walk away with, clear and confident about your decision. So here's what I believe. The right publishing path for you is the one that protects your voice, respects your timeline, and keeps you in control, especially of your legacy. That's the law of ownership. So path one, let's start with self-publishing, also known as indie publishing, because this is probably most of the people I talk to. I'm a coach for thought leaders, founders, and professionals. So this is the path I recommend most to those. And, there's some real wins here. There's some real advantages. It starts with the royalties. This is where you keep most of your royalties compared to everything else. And use, full control, full creative control. Now, there's situations where people don't want this that we'll talk about. But for this groups of, professionals, it makes the most sense. And yes, while you fund the whole thing, it also comes out of, if this is part of your business, it's part of your marketing budget. So yes, it is an investment, but this is part of, what it takes to go from an expert to being the authority and protecting your legacy. And something I talk about a lot is, if we're here to be of service, why limit it to our lifetime? That's something that a book, helps us with. So one of the things I love is the speed. And when we talk about the others, I'll get into that more. It's never been easier with the technology to do this so fast. And you own your rights. The middleman is, your help, people like me that can help you out. But it's yours. So that's the beautiful thing. It's much quicker. And then we have a comparison table that will go through the differences. So these are the advantages. The things you need to consider is the budget. So this is what I tell people from the very beginning. If this is part of your business, and most people's business, they have a percentage of their income that goes towards marketing, their marketing efforts. So then they have to allocate part of their marketing budget towards their book. Now, if you don't operate like that, you need to start operating like that. You need to budget for book expenses, because even though with print on demand, you will need books for marketing purposes, there's always money to spend on marketing. You want to give away copies, even though a lot of times you can give ebooks. There is something valuable about giving physical books for marketing purposes. There's always promo things, public relations. There's always ways to invest in marketing for your book. So you will always want to have a budget for that. Now, less prestige. I don't think this is as applicable anymore if your book was created with the help of someone that can make sure it fits in the marketplace. So I went the other day to an event, and the content of the book was very nice. However, by looking at the book, it was very obvious this was a DIY project. And there was no reason for that, because, so this is something I talk about a lot. Even though if the book is for a nonfiction business or something, it still needs to work as a product, right? You need to be able to walk into a bookstore and see it on the shelf and say, of course that belongs. You can't look at the bookshelf and say, oh, that's the self-published book just by looking at it, right? So that's why, people come to people like me, like a book coach that can help make sure that doesn't happen. No matter what genre, kids' books, fiction, nonfiction, it doesn't matter. We could still make sure the book looks like it belongs. The cover is really important. A lot of times people say, what do you think of my cover? And a lot of times I say, that's a nice flyer, but it's not genre specific. Like I cannot tell the genre of your book by looking at that book cover. So, those are the things that are very, very, very important. Now you manage everything, or you hire a team to help. This is a lot of the reasons why, me and my team, we provide Spark Social Press, we provide book management services. So who is this best for? Experts, coaches, thought leaders, professionals who want the speed and control and maximize royalties. And also I would say who are clear, and this is sometimes what I help in my coaching, is what is the business plan? What is the book for? A lot of times I remind people that you are the asset. I used to think like, oh, it's not about me, it's in my book. As a Scorpio, for example, I don't know much about astrology, but I do know that I am a behind the scenes person, right? So I'm not like it took me a lot I don't want to be in front of a camera. I don't want to be the face of anything, but I've had to get over it, because I realized like that it's, I have to be the one. We need connection, right? So we have to be the person that connects with people. It's not just about the object. So I had to learn that, right? So I say the same thing to you. Your book you are the asset. Your book is one of the things you create. So when people ask me about their branding, it's your name. It's your name. Your book is part of a thing in your menu. You know, it's your name, then it's books. You're right. Or it's your name, and then it's like the category, kids books or self-help books or whatever type of books you do, right? So that's something really, really important to remember. So how does the book fit into the bigger scheme of things? So like Kyle, I don't have it handy, but The Art of Doing Anything, Everything, which is back there, he's a public speaker. He coaches speaking. So the book fits into when he does a speaking engagement. It's part of the deal. If they don't pay him, he sells books, right? So something like that. So how does the book, whether it's a kid's book, whether it's a poetry book, it doesn't matter, how does that fit into your overall business plan? Very, 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 very important. So this has to do with self-publishing. Like for me, so a lot of the stuff I tell to my clients, I have not applied to me, to my books. Why? Because I'm more interested in selling my books in bulk. I can customize this as the publisher. I'm not interested in selling one book at a time. I rather customize the gratitude book and sell hundreds and thousands of them at a time, right? As a corporate gift, right? Than one at a time, because I can change the covers. I can personalize them with the branding of a company, of a nonprofit, right? So it's a different business plan. It's a different strategy. So this depends. Not everybody needs to be a bestseller. That can be nice. That can happen, but that's not necessarily the business strategy. It's like, who are you serving, and what's the best way to do that? You know, the bestseller can come later. So anyway, we'll talk about that more as we head on. So next, let's look at what happens when a publisher is involved. And if you have any questions, please put them in the chat or raise a hand and we'll talk about it. So next, we're going to talk about traditional and hybrid publishing. So in traditional publishing, the publisher pays you in advance, industry credibility and distribution. Now, your agent pitches with a proposal, and it takes a long, long time, at least 2 years after you get your agent, after your agent pitches you, and then in the timeline of when your book can come out. You give up all creative control and all rights, and you will earn 8 to 15% of royalties after they recoup your advance. And they expect you to have an audience and do the marketing, by the way. So I found this out the hard way. So one of the first author things I went to was Hay House, the biggest self-publishing publisher in the world, which has a very cool story. They were started by Louise Hayes when she was 60 years old. She had a healing book, which was really interesting, about the emotional. She correlated like the organs and the parts of the body, like the emotional piece associated with that. And it started off as a pamphlet, and she sold those pamphlets at church bookstores. That's how she started. And then she started Hay House Publishing at the age of 60, and it became the biggest publishing house. So it is never too late to get started. So I went to the Hay House Writers Workshop in, I don't remember what year, a long, long time ago. And they said some very, very interesting stuff. They gave us a book called Platform. Oh, I might have given my copy away. And they said that it doesn't matter how good your book is, you need an audience. That was the one thing they said. And that book Platform was about how to get noticed in a noisy world. So that was quite interesting. And they said, even if your book is finished, they said, you are not ready. And everybody was like, what do you mean? Of course I'm ready. And what they were talking about was not the words and was not the audience. They were talking about the emotional capacity to be a bestseller. And I found that to be really, 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 really interesting. Now, I'm about to start a new podcast, Luminous Living. And my podcast that is already in existence was called Magical Mindset. That is out there. And I've spoken about what I'm going to say now in length in that podcast, especially the early ones. And this concept of being ready is very, very, very interesting. And I'm going to tell you a quick story about this. So a friend of mine, I lived in California, she wrote a book, and it's called Skinny Bitch. And it was about being a vegan. She was an animal protector and activist. So she was vegan because she didn't want to hurt animals, but she understood marketing. So I lived in Los Angeles, and I was part of like the vegan raw foods movement there at many years ago. So she knew she couldn't preach to the choir, right? All the hippies knew about, why you shouldn't, why you should eat more plants, right? But she understood she needed to communicate to everybody else. So she had, a friend of hers, Drew, like a really like a hot chick with like makeup and heels. And, so what happened? Rory is her name. She used to be an agent, like for actors and models. So she's smart. She's a smart girl. She had her book, I'm not even sure. I think it was self-published. Her book, she had it in some friends' boutiques on Melrose. No big deal. So what happens? Victoria Beckham gets photographed. This is my friend's book. Gets photographed like this, reading the back of the book, Skinny Bitch. Overnight sensation. Next day on Good Morning America, blah, 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 blah. But Rory was ready, right? She was ready for her. That she wasn't like, what am I gonna wear? Am I camera shy? The girl was ready. No problem. Like, she was ready. So if that were to happen to your book, are you ready? Could you be on, Good Morning America or whatever tomorrow? Would you be ready for that? And it would not like disrupt your life in a bad way, So that's something to think about. I'll give you another example. My darling sister, she won a contest. She's an artist, and she did this beautiful artwork, and she won a contest for criminal justice reform, a beautiful thing. So she got to have an art show at the Obama White House, like an amazing thing, right? And she was not ready. She was not ready. So she was not able to capitalize on having that opportunity. So there's a lot more to these things of what it means to be ready when you get the exposure everyone dreams of, right? So maybe the 2 years is good, right? However, there's a lot of, in traditional publishing, pick me energy, because you have to find an agent. And I have some resources. I made a list of resources for everybody, and I'll tell you what they are once they're there. So, you have to be chosen by an agent to represent you and your book. Then a publisher needs to pick you. You have to have audiences pick you and your book. So there's a lot of stuff that's involved here that has to do with a lot of things. Whereas in traditional publishing, it's very much the entrepreneurial spirit, but not everybody has that, right? Even though now it has changed, you still need that to do your own marketing or partner up with someone who can do that. So now the hybrid model. So now there's different types of this, and you have to be careful with what's called a vanity press. I am not talking about a vanity press. So at that Hay House event, people like me who are very impatient and have high quality standards and said, I will not give up. I've been in marketing. I know what I like. I don't want to give up control. I said, I don't have patience for this model. I want to do it myself. So then they said, hey, speak to these people. They are our indie publishing arm. But what they didn't tell me is that they were not a hybrid. They were a vanity publishing. They said that they were the self-publishing arm of Hay House. Now, these people should have seen someone like me and told me that I was not a right fit for them, but they did not do that. So it was a nightmare. And because everything that they had, I was too advanced for. They said, we have PR. So they wrote a press release for me and it was garbage. So I had to rewrite it for them. The PRs, the social media setup, I'm like, what is this crap? So I had to redo it. And they're like, oh, we're not used to dealing with people advanced like you. I'm like, what are you talking about? So the book, we designed it. Me and my team designed it. And the one thing I needed their help on was like, okay, because I was so excited to work with people who were better than me, was the cover. And that was a disaster, but it was already past a year. And I swear it was like waking up in the twilight zone because I thought they were good. I thought they were going to be better than me. I wanted them to make my work better. And that did not happen. So when I realized, so like my books are square. So when we did the files, we did everything. So when they send me the proof and they send me back like in letterboxed instead of like this, I'm like, well, that's weird. But I'm like, okay, well, I guess everybody can make a mistake. But I thought that's really strange. Then when talking about the cover, they start talking to me about like a script font. Then I swear it was like waking up in an episode of The Twilight Zone. I'm like, did this whole time, I'm like, did you not understand anything about my book? Like, did you not see it? Like, do you not speak the visual language? I thought I was talking to like, are you not even what's it called? A graphic designer? Like, what? It was like, I cried. It was such a horrific experience. And I was going to do 6 books with these people. And I can't even tell you. I will tell you, I invested about $25,000 with these people. It was a horror story. So anyway, I learned a lot and it threw me into becoming my own publisher. And it happened unexpectedly. Like I didn't set out to be a publisher. I just said like, okay, well, I have to do this myself because I couldn't find the quality. But because I was a filmmaker and I worked so much with artists, I was I was the head of the marketing department at Whole Foods and all this stuff. And I had a team of artists, and then a friend of mine, a publicist, finally, my publicist at the time, she explained it to me. She said, it was not a good match. She explained it to me like, yes, they put out books, but not books like mine. It's like the difference between fast food and gourmet, like a fast food restaurant and a gourmet restaurant. She's like, they will put out books, but they're fast food books and yours are gourmet books. And I'm like, capiche, but it was a very, very, very painful experience. So a hybrid publisher, which is kind of what I do. So with my book coaching, it doesn't matter who the publisher is, like the people I coach, it doesn't matter. Like if they want to be the publisher, not a problem. Because the publisher is really who provides the ISBN number. That's who the publisher is. The ISBN number is the identifier. So now, some people can self-publish through Amazon only. So what does that mean? So there's a difference between publishing and who the publisher is and who does the distribution. Okay, so I'm going to talk about that in a second. And I think maybe the next one we're going to talk about distribution, but let me say this because I know it can be a very little confusing. So in a book, in the inside cover, you'll see it says title, subtitle, author, and then usually it's like a little name or a little logo, right? So Spark Social Press is me. So under my umbrella is only light-hearted, empowering books. So anything else I do under High Society Press. That's my umbrella for anything else that is not under, like, can be considered lighthearted and empowering, because, not everything. Selective, not all manuscripts are accepted, So anyway, now I'm talking about this with a client, my one-on-one client for the last 2 months. She needed to come up with a name. So now she has already a business. So she has an operating business. So what I told her to do is just do a DBA. It's much easier. So yes, so my structure, to make this very, very clear, my company is Spark Social Inc. So Spark Social Press is a DBA of Spark Social Inc. Okay? So not to complicate ourselves and not have so many things, but I would only recommend that you are your publisher if you're going to plan to have a lot of books. And what I mean by a lot of books is like 3 or more. Now, whoever is the publisher, there is book management things you've got to do. Now, if you have a team, great, delegate to the team. My team can train your team, or we can do book management services for you, whether we're the publisher or you're the publisher. It doesn't matter. We're more than happy to do those things either way, or we can train your team, or we can set it up and then train them. It doesn't matter. Just to be clear, because you've got to if we haven't talked about this before, there's 3 phases to creating a book. You have to write it, right? So that's the drafting. You have to make it. So that's production, all the production elements. Then you have to promote it, which is all the sales parts to it. Okay. So those are the 3 parts. Now, so who's the publisher? It's whose name is registered and who gave you the ISBN. So people say, can I just have Amazon do that for me? Sure. So what does that mean? Amazon gives you their version of an identifier. It's called an AISN. An ISBN, it's different. But then you are limited to your book only being in the Amazon world. So it'll be sold in Amazon all over the world, Amazon worldwide, but only that. So then you're not in libraries and not anywhere else, which I think is a mistake. So I'm just going to say that. I would not do that. I would never, ever, 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 ever do that. I do not recommend that. Now, you can do whatever you want, but as a book coach, I would never recommend that personally, because there are other options. So some people go platform by platform. Okay, so that's distribution. The platforms are distribution. Okay. Now, how you become so some platforms like Spark, who's the biggest distributor, right? You can go through them. They will give you an ISBN. They are the publisher, not you. They will put you in libraries, right? And on Amazon. That is okay. So, so that is an option. I do not recommend that for a full color book because the quality is not as good as some other options. However, what I do is for my bulk order books, I use a different printer. But for the library books, my aggregator funnels to the libraries through Ingram. Does that make sense? So people who want to do this themselves and not use someone like me to do it for you, you can go directly to Ingram. I recommend you do that if you're going to do it yourself versus going to just Amazon. Okay. So if you are a DIY, that's my, those are my suggestions. So I suggest that. So the options, you can go the traditional route. You can self-publish as you can self-publish as Amazon. You can self-publish as Spark, right? Where you retain the rights. Or you can do a hybrid with someone like me, where you retain the rights, or someone else where you probably share rights or something like that. So hybrid, you pay production and marketing costs. You have professional editing support and everything else. It's much faster than traditional, 3 to 6 months to publication. You have much higher royalty. And, the downside is it's still very selective. They're not just going to publish whatever. Like some people have come to me with some books and I'm like, I am not your person. I am not going to publish something that I don't think is good, But then also I can help work with someone to make anything good. That's how I believe in my skills as a book coach. So anyway, but then there's some topics that I'm just not interested in personally. So hybrid is the middle path. You get the best of both, I think. But, it's whatever makes sense for you. So here's a way to kind of see everything side by side. And then I have some handouts for you that have like all of this in a much easier way. So let's see. So choosing your side-by-side paths. So self-publishing, once your book is finished, you know what I'm saying? Your book is finished, everything's finished, then it's pretty quick. Hybrid, you're going to go through more levels of scrutiny, which is not a bad thing, of quality control. And then traditional, yes, at least. Upfront costs, you pay all. Hybrid, you pay all. And traditional, quote unquote, none. However, you still need to, pay to get your audience. You pay for all marketing costs. And then the royalties, you still have to pay. Don't forget, you pay for the printing of the book. And you will pay, this is after you've paid the platform fees. So, don't think like, people are like, oh yeah, even though you get this, then like, why is it so little? Yeah, it's because when Amazon prints the book and you still get, so let's say your book is $10, right? You sell your book for $10. Let's say it cost $5 to print, right? From those $5, you're going to get 70 to 100% because the rest is the platform fee. Okay, just to kind of understand. So with hybrid, there's the platform fee of wherever it's sold minus your split with your publicist, with your publisher. So for example, what I do is whatever's left, Kyle and I, he gets 75% and I get 25%. That's how it works. And then with traditional, of whatever the heck is left, you get 8 to 15%, depending on how famous you are. And then control, self-publishing, you have full control. Now, depending on your expertise and your guidance, this may or may not be a good thing. Hybrid, it's shared and guided, and limited or to none. Limited is being generous. And then the rights, you keep all. Hybrid, it's usually all, unless they become partners with you for some reason. Because now this is seen more in fiction. Like, let's say the hybrid publisher is like a studio because they want to make yours into like a movie or a video game. So, so that's why it depends. And then you assign your rights, which is crazy to me. And then credibility. This is not like what it used to be. This used to be an issue like 20 years ago. Most people can't tell anymore if it's a hybrid. And I don't think and I guess this is the highest, if people can even tell anymore. I don't know if people even know which the top 5 are, I guess. So to get an agent, so how do you figure, like, who the heck is an agent? You have to do some research. However, the most trusted resource is something called Writer's Market. So there's a book called Writer's Market. The latest one, I put there, 100th edition. I put it in the chat. So there's the most trusted guide to getting published. There you have a lot of things, contests, the reputable ones, all kinds of stuff is in there. And then a guide to literary agents, 30th edition. So I just looked it up to make sure I gave you the proper thing. If you want to eventually, so what I say is go the self-publishing route or the hybrid route in the meantime. Hold on to your rights while you pursue the traditional publishing. Like, do both, because, so if someone, asked me, like, what would I do in that situation? Build your self-publishing empire and then have the traditional people come to you. That's what I would do. So if you want to look for an agent in the meantime, if you want to be proactive, those are the resources you need. So now if you're interested in, self-publishing or hybrid publishing resource, of course, that's us. I put our information there. And then self-publishing resources. I learned a lot of the stuff I've learned about the business. I learned from an amazing Facebook group, 50K, and I put their information there, and from Indie Author Magazine, and an amazing conference called AuthorNation Conference. It started off as 20 books to 50K. I've been there many, many times. They're amazing. I know those people very, very, very well. And 50 books to 20K came from, this is pretty funny. These guys were Marines, retired Marines. They were friends, and they figured out, so they wrote, like, I think the genre is called space operas. So yeah, it's called space opera. So it's like a subgenre of like sci-fi books. So these guys are very, very funny. They're very sweet. And he figured out, like, based on the books he was selling, he needed 20 books to make 50K a year so he could retire in Cabos in Mexico or something like that. So he started like a little Facebook group because they had like their theory was the rising tide raises all boats. And that's how it started. And now there's like more than 80,000 people. And it's an incredible, incredible resource. So their conference in Vegas was amazing. Like, when I went there was like 1,000 of us, and I'm like, my people, it was incredible. And then mostly nonfiction, but it was so cool. And then it evolved to AuthorNation. And I've made some great friends there, and I've learned a lot. I learned a lot about the business, and I've made some great friends there, and it's been years. It's been years and years and years. So anyway, so those are some resources I wanted you to have. So now, to find an agent and to pitch, this is kind of what you need. So to find an agent, you need a query letter, by the way, but it's kind of the same thing as what you're going to need for a proposal. So these are the 6 parts. One is the overview and the hook. So yeah. So I wanted to be practical, so this is everything you're going to need in a proposal. Essentially, this is a business plan for a book, and it is how a publisher decides whether or not to invest in you. And so even though it's the agent who's going to be doing this, I'm sure it's going to be you who's going to be doing the work. So of course, the hook. what's the big idea and why does it matter now? Why is the book relevant now? And then again, not just now, but in the 2 years when the book comes out, okay? Which is crazy. So anyway, and then of course, the author bio and platform. This is where your email list becomes incredibly powerful. Publishers want to see that you already have an eager audience willing to buy your book. So credentials, audience size, and why you are the authority to write this book. So this is super important. So this is why I'm saying this is a huge investment anyway, and it takes time. And another book that I highly suggest is The Toilet Paper Entrepreneur, because it talks about how not having money sometimes is great because it makes you very, very creative on how to actually make this happen. So the marketing plan, this is the part most authors skip or write weekly. And this is, do not do that, because this is often what tips like a decision. Very, very, very important. So, who is this book for? What's already out there? And how does your book stand apart? And by the way, a lot of this, so in my manuscript review, a lot of these elements are there, by the way. Reverend, a lot of these things are there, which is important. So then, the outline, that's the roadmap, arc, structure, the value, why each chapter has to be there. A sample chapter, usually the intro plus 1 or 2 of the best, most polished writing. How you will promote the book, very, very, very important. So as you know, most of this is about marketing. So don't worry, I have a template, a book proposal template in the downloads, so you don't have to build it from scratch. And even if you're self-publisher, I really recommend going through this exercise, at least the overview and the chapter outline, because it definitely makes a book stronger. Any questions? So here are my suggestions. So before our next webinar, review, if you're interested in publishers, research, draft the pitch, review the downloads, see the difference. I spoke about those too. Amazon's, they're called KDP in case I didn't specify that before, in case you're not familiar. Let's see. And don't be afraid of writing a terrible first draft. We've talked about that before. So which path feels right to you? I'm curious. I know this is a personal question, but very important. And then, are you ready to choose your path? If you're not already a part of it, join our author community. There's 3 levels: at your own pace, our group cohorts, and of course, one-on-one VIP experience. If you're done writing, there's always a manuscript review available to you. We cover a lot of these marketing things that are be great for your business plan. And then there's always book consultations. And if you're not ready where to start, we have the quiz that you can take to understand where to go. And then I'd love to see you next time. We're going to talk about covers. Oh yeah, that's what we'll go. We'll go through how to do research, very, very, very important, based on the genre, and how to do this. It's super, super important.